this episode of the Funhouse Podcast. We're going to be talking about physical copies. What's going on? Are they dead? Are they still alive? What's happening? We don't know, but we will know. Hopefully. We'll see. Anyways, also talking about what is the better product when it comes to gaming, cartridge, disc, CD, or digital download. Either one or all of them. It's up to you. We're just going to talk a few things of that. But as we get started into this episode of the podcast, I want to make sure I remind you guys to like, share, subscribe. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel, which if you're watching this or listening to this, you're already on our YouTube channel. And we appreciate that. But make sure you're watching our videos, from all our fun stuff that we do together or individually. Usually it's together. Or just listening to our podcast or watching. We appreciate you doing both. We appreciate your support. Thanks for following us as well. If you don't, make sure you follow us on our Instagram page and our Facebook page. We're anywhere and everywhere. We are 100% family friendly. That is all I'm going to say on all that. This is a commercial free, hopefully, unless YouTube decides to throw in their ads, either or. But we try to make our podcast episodes short, at least 20 minutes or maybe a little less. Today we're going to be talking about, like I said, physical copies. Are they dead? What's going on with that because of digital downloading? Also, the better product, like I already said, we're going to get into that. But to start this podcast, I want to first go into, I was looking at this the other day, if you don't know, or maybe you have some, the Nintendo Power magazines. Did you ever have these? I had them early in the issues when they first were coming out. This is actually issue number 97. This is from June 1997. This is the N64 one I was looking at because I had bought this one before. This is the biggest N64 issue exclusive information. It was basically going over the Clay Fighter 63 and a quarter gobs of fun. Anyways, it was going over the Clay Fighters. They were on the cover. And it struck me when I was looking at it, one thing that I remember when I looked at the Nintendo Power magazines, one thing that I always enjoyed looking through, if you did as well, let me know in the comments, was I always enjoyed looking at the incoming mail that they would get, that people all over the country, or I believe even people from across the world, would mail in letters to Nintendo Power magazine, and just kind of letting them know, the games they're enjoying, or where, and the fun item articles they like reading from the magazine. But the one thing I always liked looking at was the artwork that people would draw on the envelopes that they would mail in, or if they mailed in a drawing they did and they stuck it in the envelope, mailed it to Nintendo Power. Always some fun artwork from whatever age group it was. There were always kids, of course, that were drawing all kinds of, different figures. I think in this one, let me see really fast what it was, because this is what caught my eye and it brought back some memories. On this one, there's someone that did a drawing on the envelope of Zelda from Zelda 64. Someone did Earthworm Jim. There's a Bomberman. There's Mega Man. There's Mario. Turok, and and of course you would see where a lot of the people wrote from, like then here's someone that wrote from Michigan, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and so on and so on. So I always thought that was fun. It was the Player's Pulse section of the magazine. I just always liked seeing the artwork that people did, rather how good or how bad. It was just fun to see that, and I always wanted to do that, but I never did. But one of the things that caught my eye when I was looking through it was the power charts. They would always do their top 10. And I can't remember if this was a fan base, whether it was the gamers, that had subscriptions to Nintendo Power that did this, or it was the staff from Nintendo Power. I didn't do enough looking into that. I was too busy looking at the countdown. But anyways, this was the June 97 issue. And the thing that caught my eye was the Nintendo 64 top 10. This is the top 10 games for Nintendo at the time of 97 of June. So I wanted to go through that real quick. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Number 10, they had Pilotwings 64. And they had Star Fox 64 was at number 9. Cruisin' USA was at number 8. Doom 64 was at 7. They had Wave Racer at 64. Blast Corps was at 5. Shadows of the Empire, Star Wars game, was at number 4. Turok the Dinosaur Hunter was at number 3. And rounding out the top 2, Super Mario 64 and Mario Kart 64. Now, I was looking at this as I was doing show notes for the show, for this podcast episode, And man, one thing that caught my eye was, when 64 was around and they were producing games, a lot of games, I mean a lot of games, ended with the 64 on it. Because I know that was a big deal for Nintendo. I mean, just in this top 10 alone, you had Mario Kart 64, you had Super Mario 64, you had Wave Racer 64, you had Doom 64, you had Star Fox 64, Pilot Wing 64. They couldn't have just used the name. I mean, I get it, Nintendo, I get it, Nintendo 64, I get it. But man, that's interesting. I didn't really think about that for a long period of time because when you thought Nintendo 64, you always thought, oh, okay, yeah, Mario Kart 64, Super Mario 64, Pilot Wing 64, whatever. But then when I was reading the list, like, wow, I didn't realize how many games were ended with the number 64. Anyways, another thing that caught my eye when I was looking at the top 10 was which of these games do I remember playing a lot of? I remember Cruising USA was a fun game. Actually, it still is a fun game. If you play the arcade cabinet, it's still a fun game. It's fun if you play it on the consoles. It holds up very well. Pilot Wings. I do remember playing that one. That was a really good one. Star Fox 64. I remember when that first came out. I played that with some friends of mine. They had a 64. I didn't. I did not have a 64. I had friends that had it. That was when we played. Shadows of the Empire. I recently played that just this past week, a couple of days before this podcast. And I forgot how fun that game is, but also some of the stages are very difficult. This is a game that me and friends of mine that had a 64, we played this almost on a daily basis. And I can't recall if we actually beat the game, but we got really far. It's a great game. And to see that it was ranked number 4 at the time in basically the summer of 97 was really pretty cool. But the fact that Mario Kart and Super Mario were the top 2 is no surprise. Those are still 2 games that hold up. Those are still 2 games that hold good value. A lot of these games in the top 10 do hold some decent value, some more than others, of course. But I just thought that was interesting. That was something I said, I want to talk about in the podcast was the rankings they gave for these games at the time. These were just games. They weren't retro. There was nothing retro about N64 games or anything like that. These were the games at the time that came out. And the fact to see where they ranked, I want to know of that top 10, what would your top 10 look like when it came to Nintendo 64? Did you have any of these games? I didn't have an N64 at the time. I do now have a few games. I have a handful of games, a few more. I have maybe 20, 30 games or so, somewhere around there. But that was just interesting to see that. And it was kind of a blast from the past. What were the top 10 games for the 64 at that time when it was the game? That was really cool to see. Another side, or another things we were talking about today on the podcast. What is better for you? Which do you prefer when it comes to either retro gaming, modern gaming, either or both? Because I was thinking about this. You have cartridge games, you have your Atari 2600s cartridge games. You have Nintendo 64 games, you have your Nintendo games. Any game that's a cartridge game, you have Sega Master System games, all that. Or are you more of a disc, CD type of guy, PS1, PS2, PS3, what have you, modern games to now, that are doing disc. Or if you are into the newer generation of gaming, are you more of just a digital download kind of guy? Let me just get the game, let me buy it, let me get straight to it, let me download, let me start playing. Which held up better for you? For me, I would definitely say I do like cartridge gaming better. I don't have any physical. I don't have any digital download games. I think I had 1 or 2 on my Switch. They were free games that I just like, whether they're free or they were demo. I just wanted to try them. But I prefer physical copies. But for me, it was always cartridge games because I dropped, especially in my youth, I dropped many games on the floor. And if anything, maybe you would chip a little bit of the cartridge, but not much. The majority of the games I have don't have chips or anything like that. You'd really have to drop those things really well for them to chip. And with disc CD games, they got scratched pretty easily. I was amazed when disc CDs were first issued and they were starting to come out. You had to be very delicate and careful with them, but it's good to know that you can resurface games with CDs and what have you. But I understand as well with digital copies, with digital downloads, it's an easy, game's out, boom, download, ready to go, rock and roll. So I just wanted to know in the comment, let me know as you're listening to this or watching or both, what was your preferred? What do you prefer? Do you prefer them all? You have a problem with any of them? Or is there a specific one? Like I said, for me, it would have to be the cartridge games. I grew up on Nintendo. A lot of the consoles I have now are the cartridge-based consoles. I prefer cartridge and a pear tree. So that's my pick on that. Let me know as we're going through. And the last thing we want to talk about in this episode of the podcast, and this is one that's really, really, how can I put this? This is one that I'm really, when it comes to gaming, I'm a little bit concerned about because, you know, growing up as a youth, I enjoyed having a physical copy of a game. Something I was talking to my wife about. And the question of the day is, to end the podcast, this is the big topic for the podcast. Are physical copies dead? And saying that, a friend of the show, Tyler Esposito, with My Retro Life, had recently did a video on this, and this is something I was preparing for with the podcast to kind of do a little bit on as well. He kind of beat me to the punch, but I watched his video on YouTube, My Retro Life with Tyler. He did a great episode on it. I loved what he did with it, and he hit every point. He did a video and said physical copies in stores like Best Buy, Walmart, Target have less copies and more digital downloads. Code printed on the receipt. If you've done the digital download thing, you know what I'm talking about. And it really made me think. I recently went into a Walmart, Target, what have you, and that was something I noticed. Hey, he was right. As I was preparing show notes for this podcast with it, there are stacks of the digital download cards that you could just buy, and I was like, wow, they just have stacks, and there's probably 30 stacks of a digital download card, and very few physical copies of certain games. I noticed when you went down the actual physical game aisle, they had games, but they had very few. A lot of the slots were empty because they're not carrying as many, I guess. And it was pretty sad because you think about it, you go into a store and you just go in there and pull this little digital download card with the the barcodes or whatever you on it. They scan it, it gives you the code on the receipt. You download it onto your 64 or PlayStation, whatever, and that's it. I mean, you don't have a physical object in your hand. For instance, like I have them here in the background, you don't have a physical copy of something like my Complete in Box, Raiders of the Lost Arks. I mean, just like Tyler mentioned in his video, just the thrill of, as a kid, if you were a kid who grew up with physical copies like I did, when I had a Nintendo back in the day, the very few games I did get as a kid, I was excited to see what I got. You open up the gift, you're like, oh my gosh, I got such and such. And to have the physical copy, to be able to appreciate artwork, to be able to look on the back and read a description, you can see, I mean, just the little things as you get older, when it was made, when it came out of, you open it up, you got your game cartridge in there, and you got the manual. Sometimes you have some stickers or some fun art, a poster or something in there. And you don't get that with digital download. And I feel like kids today and today's youth are just going to be missing out so much of having a physical copy of, man, I remember when my parents bought this for me, and it was a game I was really wanting. I've got the physical copy of it, and I have it on my shelf. It's there. I can read through the manual. I can check out the poster, hang the poster up, and what have you. Appreciate the artwork on it. But with digital download, you just don't get that. And I get that it's a different time for kids, but there's so much that's being missed with kids to not be able to just the excitement, the enthusiasm of, man, a new game, a physical copy of a game. One of my sons, who's 15 at the moment, he's part of the Retro Fun House YouTube channel. He's on there from time to time. He appreciates when we go game hunting, and there's a game that he's looking for, physical copy, and he's like, man, look at this. You see the enthusiasm of, man, we don't have this. I like this game. I've been wanting to play this game. I watch the videos on it, this and that. And for me, that's a flashback to when I was growing up. And just to find a game that you physically want. And I still have that at times, when I'm going buy a actual copy of a 64 game, or if we're out game hunting, or we go to some of the retro gaming stores, and I finally find a game that I haven't played in years that I want to actually buy so I can actually own, and I can play and let my kids play. It's fun to know that I've got it. All I got to do is insert, play, good to go. My younger kids, they've had a few opportunities to play some games on the Wii. And I see their faces. They hold like Cars 2 for the Wii. And they're looking at the artwork, and they're opening it up. They see the manual, and they pull the disc out. And they're ready to play and just race or what have you. It's a lot of fun. And like I said, you don't get that with digital downloads. I'm not trying to discourage people from downloading digital, downloads. I've done a few of the free stuff, like I said, the demos. So if that's what you like to do, that's fine. I'm not bashing people. I'm not trying to make it seem like that. I just think there's some fun attributes to owning a physical copy where there's some sentimental value to it or some memories that can be built around it because, man, it was my birthday or I got good grades or what have you. And my parents or my dad or my mom, whoever, or my brother or whoever said, hey, man, here you go, this such and such. And you open it up, you're like, all right, cool. Instead of someone just handing you, a cardboard piece of cardboard. Hey, here's the receipt. Go ahead and download the game. I mean, I guess some people be excited for the moment, but when you're done with that little card that you paid for the download, then what? You throw the card away and you have it download on your game. But just for me, there's just more sentimental value to it with having something physically in your hand that you're like, all right, pop it in and boom, ready to go. And so my thing is, what is happening to gaming with that? Is this good or is it bad that physical copies could be done? It's plain and simple. Physical copies could be done. Well, what would that look like? I mean, well, you see places like, GameStop, will retro gaming stores kind of be the end of the line when it comes to physical copy games. And there's a lot to be said, but we don't really know. I mean, I'm hoping that, Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft or what have you would continue to make physical copies because it's just appreciation people have for it. And hopefully kids today will also learn to appreciate, having a physical copy, or even adults that buy digital download, to appreciate just physically owning it. But either way, if you don't, that's fine. If you're a digital downloader, hey, good for you. And I have no problem with that. I just think there's so much more being missed with not having something physically that you can put on your shelf and be like, man, that's cool. I'm gonna read through the manual again or something like that. So, what memories will kids have, if any, with digital downloads? And I think I already covered that. That was one of my last show notes I had written down. I was trying to think of it. Luckily, I had it written down right here in front of me so I could see it. But I honestly don't know. If you're a digital downloader, let me just put it to you like this. This question is probably for you. Will you have any memories as a digital downloader? If you do, that's great. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read your comments on if you are a digital downloader and some of the things that you enjoy about it. Hey, I'm not here bashing people, not trying to make judgment on anyone about digital downloading. I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing. I just say there's so much to be missed with physical copies. I'm a physical copy kind of guy, but I get it. I'm all for it. If that's what you want to do, that's great. But I'd like to see where it's digital and physical. Maybe we can just keep it at that. If you want to be a digital downloader, okay. If you want to also have physical copies, there you go. Maybe we can have it to where just both coexist together, and I think we'd be fine with that. Anyways, guys, let me know. Again, if you haven't checked out my Retro Life, which is a good friend of the show, it's Tyler. You can go to him, check out his YouTube channel, and check out that video. He did a great job. He does a great job, a good friend of the show. Other than that, guys, that's all I've got. Like I say, we try to keep the episode short. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned because somewhere down the line we'll have a new video.